Lifeblood is a liquid released from the body when it comes into contact with water. Normal people will die if they drink lifeblood. However, members of society like Jessica can survive by converting toxic substances in their bodies. However, when Jessica drank the lifeblood, her old mother was surprised and said, "Are you pregnant?" Because after Jessica drank the life juice, the father's daughter also followed the awakened mother Jessica's ability, drank the life juice, and gained the memories and wisdom of female ancestors, including her deceased mother. Her memories are also transferred to Jessica. However, the father's daughter is not a second-generation mother. Instead, she was labeled a devil by the sorority. We will explain the details of Jessica's daughter later and explain why Paul's sister was called a devil. But for now, Paul's sister is definitely his best friend. She cannot talk to Jessica in the sea. She can also feel Paul's thoughts and feelings. Jessica changed her conservative attitude after drinking the juice of life. She knows that Jessica is a member of the sisterhood. However, compared with the benefits of the sisterhood, she pays more attention to the safety of her second son, Paul. Already in the early stages of the film, she still owed Paul the idea of giving up revenge on her father, but when she drank the juice of life, she also inherited the ambition of the sisterhood. Jessica, who is of the mother's generation, took the initiative to join the Fleming family in the north to spread superstitions about their ancestors. In fact, after Jessica becomes a mother in the novel, there are also moments that are similar to the previous work. Ignorance it's quite different from the dignity shown in the film, but you always have the feeling that you are in control of everything. Back to the point, Jessica's goal in this film is very clear. It is to become Lisa Aragarical for Paul the paved road. The superstition of controlling the Flemings and Paul is actually as clear as Jessica. If you want to win this war, the superstition of controlling the Flemings is the quickest and most effective way. But compared to Jessica's superstition, Paul's side is very resilient. Whether it's the first murder or the second murder. In Paul's opinion, the so-called mature future comes after that. A tragic depiction of life and death follows. One of the scenes in the film is where Paul is collecting his father's wedding ring. He wants to avenge his father's bloodshed. But he didn't want to accept the superstition of controlling the Fleming family for his own petty revenge. But he wants to believe in his own power. To integrate himself and learn the Flemish way of survival. Find another way to win this war. At the same time, Paul Steiges joined the guerrillas in the north and helped support the Hakaran soldiers. He learned survival techniques from the Fleming family. And there is a scene in the movie where Steiges asks Paul to travel through the desert at night to test his patience. And Paul is in the middle of the desert and sees a strange figure. At this time, Paul did not immediately realize that the enemy was the female protagonist Cheney. Instead, Sia Escher called James' name. Even when Paul was wondering whether he should return to the south, he said, "James, tell me, what should I do?" Because James actually has a couple killed by Paul in Glory that appears in the final ending. There is not much actual contact with Paul. So why is Jacob so important to the prodigal Paul? It is because in Jacob's imagination, it was Jacob who was leading Paul into the desert. Paul is known for his memories of Steiga Duncan. He knows this friend who taught Duncan. In a dream, James learned that Duncan has the ability to cross the desert. Paul also incorporates them into his own skill set. This is why when the desire to travel the desert is mentioned twice in the movie, the lost Paul thinks of James first. As for the atmosphere of Paul and Cheney, this part of the movie also has some interesting scenes from the novel. Originally, in addition to the chemistry that occurs in the subsequent fight, the two naturally bonded. To be clear, this is the first ambush between Paul and Cheney in this movie. Paul finally understood it. This time, he finally noticed that there were two soldiers behind him. In order to protect Cheney, in the first film, he used Duncan's trick to kill Sodka's soldiers. A comparison of the spice-gathering equipment of the first HEV family. The equipment of the HEV family seems to be more advanced. It was also confirmed that the HEV family mentioned in the first film is a backward device for the HEV family. The purpose is to reduce the confusion of the HEV family to exploit. Over time, Paul also began to have more influence over Sodka. During this time, Paul was also recognized by his neighbor, Steiga, who was cool in the first film. Funny Dandan movie, but this little secret of Paul is actually very consistent with the change in Steiger's later image in the novel. As mentioned in the novel, how did Paul see this friend in front of his eyes? How did he gradually fall into the joy of worshipping his own followers? Even North Korean Carly, from whom Paul initially left, praised Paul's adaptability. I don't necessarily believe Paul is a savior, but I very much agree with Paul's sense of duty to his comrades, because in that scene Paul said, even if he sacrificed himself and became a glorious sacrifice for his comrades, I would say without hesitation. On the other hand, Carly was only influenced by Paul's sense of duty. Carly also later became a glorious victim who lost her life to protect Paul later. Paul even acquired the ability to kill insects with his own hands. For the Flemish, learning to kill insects with one's own hands is like a ritual. Paul also called himself Muad'Dib, after the desert rat. Muad'Dib does not only symbolize adaptation to the environment or the strength to overcome the past. The name Muad'Dib was brought by the Islamic savior Mahdi, means, he who blinded the god of war, or he who is guided by the god of war. One of the highlights of Islam. The Mahdi is a religious leader before the creation of the world. He is a Muslim. The name Paul Muad'Dib also gradually became the religious name of the Fleming family. And he mastered Muad'Dib's own exceptional talents, but by the time he realized it, it was too late. The actions of Paul Muad'Dib and the reaction of the Fleming family to the religious people also formed the main theme of the subsequent series of victims. On the one hand, Mother Jessica. With the growing popularity of Paul, the faith of most of the Flemish in the north was ready to go south, spreading the legend of Muad'Dibu in the south. And Paul also caused controversy about Jessica's method. Spreading superstition. From the beginning of the film, Paul was hesitant to follow the traditional future described in the prophecy and refused to follow Jessica south. Instead, he decided to stay in the north with Steve and the others. The film also became more and more cruel with Paul and the Flemish. But the beast Laban, who originally starred in the Sacrifice series, gradually lost the trust of Hakanan Nage. Also, to deal with these barbaric Flemish, Hakanan Nage had to help him at most. He hoped to take his younger nephew Pedro with him. The film also met the main theme of, this is the territory of the Hakanan family. The black and white filter creates a sense of peace in it. A world similar to the world of the fascists is created. A world of extreme cruelty. There is no color in it. There is no extreme black and white that comes with the ability to survive. In this scene, Austin Butler, who played the role of the Cat King, uses his exquisite performance full of evil aura with the feeling of the death of the fascists. I was very shocked after watching the movie. By the way, who is this Pedro? He is not only the successor of Hakanan Nage. Behind the scenes, he is also one of the bloodlines of the Sisterhood. The Sisterhood is the most mysterious organization in Sacrifice. Apart from having strong psychic powers. As a witness, he is also married to a large family. The ultimate goal of the background is to pass on the genes of each family. There was only one left, known as the Son of the Nature God. This Son of the Nature God has the ability to observe the past and see the future. In the last movie, the massacre of the Hakanan family seems to be an order from the Emperor. However, Sacrifice 2 also reveals the real manipulator behind it. This is the Mohaya tribe around the Emperor. The goal is to give the Emperor a pretext to attack the Hakanan family. The Sisterhood will use this influence to promote the next heir to the throne. Among them, Paulo and Pedro are both chosen by the Sisterhood as the next successors. Among them, Paulo is the first candidate to become the god of nature. In Sacrifice 1, Paulo showed the great power of Hakanan, so the Sisterhood prepared a playbook for Paulo. Let Paulo and Jessica become the survivors of the Hakanan family. With the image of Hakanan, mother and savior in the words of Hakanan. Join the Hakanan tribe. In Sacrifice 2, millions of people support the Sisterhood. They are waiting for Paulo to take over. As the second candidate, Pedro is indeed a cruel pervert, but he is more easily controlled through sex. In the film, the Sisterhood used this to seduce Pedro, so he gave birth to Pedro's child. In order not to lose in the final battle with Paulo, the Sisterhood can continue to preserve the bloodline of the Hakanan family. In addition to the Emperor's command, members of the Sisterhood are also either Paulo or Pedro, who won the final victory. How Princess Hakanan's bloodline is married to the Sisterhood. How the Sisterhood manipulates the new Emperor behind the scenes. Paul killed James in a desert battle. Because the prodigal Paul has the right to touch James 13 inches of water. In the novel, when Chaney gave Paul 13 inches of water, Paul still let Chaney have it. This is not only a secret in the culture of the full moon, but also a kind of love in fact. It is a pity that there is no limit in this movie, so I left out this part. Instead, Paul and Chaney develop a romantic relationship under the guise of revolution. It also enriches the atmosphere of the revolutionary feelings of the two of them. What is revolutionary feeling? In this movie, we can see that Chaney is a typical Northern Irishman. It is solid and very clear. The so-called legend of the Salvation Group is a political tool of the convention. The purpose is to manipulate the thinking of the reverse full moon movement. Even at the end of the movie, only Chaney maintained his rationality and stuck to his original intention. And this time, Paul, despite knowing the existence of the Salvation Group, was just as adamantly opposed to rationality as Chaney. Chaney used his own way to defy the fate in front of him. The relationship between Paul and Chaney has been going for a long time.